So welcome back. What we have here now is that we want to talk about conditions. Conditions are really a task which we do quite often. So basically, we want to check if a certain variable um, or a state of something is at a certain point. Okay, so for example, if a value is below a threshold or a value is above a threshold. Um, Most of the times, conditions are more famously known as if-else statements and are really useful. So if this is the case, then do that. If this, then that. For smart home automation, that's one of the most basic um, programming stuff we will use as well. And if-else is basically the logic behind. And we already know how to check those conditions with AND combinations or combinations, and we check if it's greater, smaller, or whatever with the operators we already looked at. So let's assume an example right now, okay? We want to perform different tasks depending on the state of a variable. So if, for example, it is above or below a threshold. Let's say we have a warehouse and we have boxes in there and we want to check if we still have enough items there. Okay, so we want to check how large is the current stock. And if it's below a threshold, we know we have to order new items to fill up our warehouse. So in order that we need the products, we can produce them. Um, so let's say we always need at least 50 items in a warehouse. If we're below that, we should order stocks. Better would be an amount of 75 and more. So what could we do to check that, for example? So let's dive into what if-else statements and how they are used in Python. Okay. So first of all, we need a variable for the current stock. So we define a variable which contains the current stock. We only need that so that we can check if this variable is below or above the threshold. So this is a variable we artificially define just for the sake of the example. Okay, and that could be then current stock, as we could name it again cheesecake if we want to, but we stay somehow logical so we know what we talk about. So we name it current stock, so it's easy to interpret for us. And let's say we currently have 28 items in stock. And now, sorry, now we check 3 different conditions, let's say. So the first condition is the stock currently below 50, or is it between 50 and 75, or is it above 75? Those are the 3 possibilities we could walk into, because we know 50, if it's below, then we should order new stuff. Somehow above 50 is okay, but the best would be above 75. Okay, so those are the conditions we could check in our example. We could check for more stocks, but let's keep it simple. So, and every time one is true, we want to do something. So, but first we want to check, is something true? So we ask the program, if the following is true, then do something. Okay, so let's do that. If current variable is called current stock is below 50, then we need to do something, right? So if checks now if the variable current stock is below 50. We know this is an operator which we can use. And so if current stock is some number of 49 or lower, this will be true. And if it's true, then we should do something. And to define what then has to be done in Python, we say, okay, do everything which is follows after, sorry, I was one below, after double point. So we type in double point, and then we type in enter, and then you can already see that Colab basically says, okay, we are now writing with some spaces in front of in the current row, which tells the programming interpreter later on, okay, everything which is now at this position, so not from full left, but some with some spaces more to the right, will be part of this if condition. So everything after this double point, which is here and not here left, will be part of this. Okay? To get there, if we somehow mess up, we can use the tab button, which usually gets us to the next tab inside to the right, so we're not writing on the full left. So what do we want to do if we have below 50 stocks? We know we should have at least 50, so somehow we need order. I'm not doing an ordering process with you now, but I want to give you an example what you can do. So let's calculate how many items are missing, so we have at least 50 again on stock, because that's what we want. So we have somehow a variable which we call missing stock. Okay, and let's say how much are missing. Let's try to answer the question. And we know we have currently something in stock, and we know we need to have at least 50. So the missing items is the difference between 50 and what we have currently in stock. So if I subtract current stock from 50, we get a difference of whatever we need to order to have at least 50 again, which we store in the variable in the object stock. Now we can tell whoever is responsible for ordering that he needs to order exactly that amount by telling him that. So let's tell him you are low on stock or on items. We can call it whatever we want. You have to order an additional, and how much do we need to order? Plus, we want it as string, missing stock. Great. What have we achieved so far? We know now if the variable is below 50, so the current stock variable, then we get into the first condition if current stock below 50 will be true, and then we will calculate how much are missing and tell that some supervisor who needs to order the missing stock. But what if the stock is not below 50? What then? We have said we have another question. If it's below between 50 and 75, we want to do something else. And if it's above 75, we want to do something else again. So usually in an if else statement, the next thing we could do would be, so you can wait a sec. If I go down a line, you can see I'm still in the tab space. So I'm to that if condition. If I want to change that and not be part of the if condition anymore, I go back to the full left of the script with the backspace. And here we go. I am not part of the if condition. Everything I type in here will be not part of the if condition, but run anyways because it comes afterward. So he checks the if conditions. If the if condition is true, I'm doing these lines, and then I'm doing this line. If the if condition would be false, I would skip these two lines and would go directly to this line. So usually the next step in an if condition would be else. So if the condition is not true, then jump to the else condition and do that. However, if we want to do nothing, we just leave the else condition empty or do not write it. However, in that case, we have two more things we want to check. It's either between 50 and 75 or above 75. So to do that, we need an else if. We need another condition where we ask if this is true, or else if this is not true, then if this is true, so else if, and then we can say, okay, if this is also false, then else if Then we go to the next else, and if this is true, and go on and go on and go on, then we come to the else and say, okay, in all other cases do this. So we want an else if. However, in Python, an else if, because programmers are lazy, is not fully written. We're lazy. We only write elif because we spare us 3 letters, S, E, and a space. That's how programmers are. So the next condition, elif. If the current stock is larger or equal to 50, because we now need a larger and equal, because what would happen if we would have exactly 50 in the stock? The other was below, so we need larger and equal. And now another condition needs to be true, so we need an and, because both sides needs to be true. Current stock is below 75. If those two things are true, then we want to do the following. And what will we do? What could we do in that case? We could tell the supervisor everything's fine. However, we could tell him how much reserve he has until he reaches 50, because we know it would be better to be above 75. Then we would have to do nothing. But if it's somewhere in between and we get close to 50, maybe we could order in advance to not go below 50, because we never want to go below that. But sometimes it happens. Sometimes there's a big order and we lose all our items, so we need to order new items fast. However, usually we want to order them in advance, so we tell our supervisor, whoever that would be, good, we have currently enough in stock, but we have only double point plus something I'm writing here, items in reserve. So what I want to tell him right now is how many items are still in reserve. Okay. So what we do then is we need to somehow calculate how much are we in advance of reaching 50. And what is this? This is this calculation the other way around. This tells us how much we're below, and now we want to tell how much we're above 50. So it's actually current stock minus 50. And therefore, from that, we want the string again. And last but not least, we have a third condition, the else condition. So we're above 7 or equal to 75. What do we tell him then? Everything is fine. Just chill. Okay. So now our code should be ready. We have a variable current stock. We can check if the first condition is true. If it's below, if this variable is below 50, then we do this, and then we're done. If this is false, then we say skip that and go to the next line in the code. The elif statement. We check, is this true? If it's true, do this. If it's false, skip that and go to the next line, to the else statement. So what would happen if the current stock is below 28? This should be true and the rest should be ignored, so we should see this. So 50 minus 28, that would be 22. And the result is an error, as it usually happens. So now we go to debugging. I'm back in a second. That was an easy one again. It was just a typo. I have wrote current stock, not current stock, with one R. So now it should work. You're low on items, you have to order an additional 22. And now we can mess around with it. For example, what would happen if we would have 60? The second elif statement should be true. What happens? Good, we have currently enough in stock, but we have only 10 items in reserve. And once we have 80, it should tell us everything is fine, just chill. So here we can learn different stuff. I'm not reading this for you now in full blown. This is just additional information for you if you want to learn more about this. I'm now giving you the next exercise. Okay? We now learned how condition statements, if-else statements work, and let's do another one. Let's try to repeat it on your own so you really learn how to do this. So let's make a condition-based if-else actions for a variable you define yourself. Again, like with current stock, you define a variable and give them some value you want to give it. However, this variable needs to be a number, an integer at best, between 0 and 60. More is impossible, because this should mimic exam points of an exam of a student. And the exam takes 60 minutes, so it should be 60 points. Okay? So what we do then is we want to tell the student how good he was. So if the number is below 20, tell him, well, that was not enough. Try again next time. If the number is then greater or equal to 20, but still less than 30, you tell him, you've passed. So this is quite an easy exam. You passed already with 20 points. Sometimes you pass with 30, sometimes with more, depends. But this, you pass with 20, and you tell him, you've passed, but you should put in more effort the next time to get a better grade. Okay? Then, if the number is between 30 and 40 or equal to 30, you tell him, your performance was okay, good for you, but you can do better. And if the number is greater or equal to 40, you tell him, or below 50, you tell him, good performance, you can relax this evening, have fun, blah, blah. And if the number is greater or equal to 50, you tell him, excellent performance, you can be proud of yourself. Okay, let's try this. I'll show you the result in the next video.